You're watching AWANI's Selecta with me, Ibrahim Sani. AWANI Selecta is about the concept of aggregating some of the big shows that have happened or will happen on Astro AWANI for your viewing, because we know your time is precious. So we aggregate some of the more important highlights of the show in this concise and compressed episode for your viewing. We start off with an interview that took place on Let's Talk with Syarat Kutan, where he speaks with the president of Gerakan. Gerakan, as you know, is one of the bigger parties, or used to be one of the bigger parties inside Barisan Nasional's coalition a decade ago. Is Gerakan still relevant? Here is the Gerakan president speaking with Let's Talk with Syarat Kutan.
Your party lost 11 parliamentary seats and 31 state seats in the last general election, I understand correctly. Now, in June last year, after a couple of months after the general election, your party decided to leave Barisan Nasional. Now, that's momentous because at that point it looked like Barisan Nasional was falling apart. But before we talk about Barisan Nasional, your own party, did you ever think at that point, the sheer scale of the losses, that you might want to disband the party? Was there ever a thought among, party members, the leadership, rank and file, that perhaps it was the end of the road for Gerakan?
No, in fact, that we have not thought that we have lost everything. There's no signal at all. Maybe we're trying to classify ourselves that we already lost touch with the grassroots. So that's why we lost everything. We are not prepared, because we know that we are not doing well, but not to that extent that we lost the 11 parliament seats and 31 DUN seats and all this. And it really hurt. It really hurt Party Gerakan. Yeah.
Now, do you blame yourselves as a party? Do you blame the coalition? Do you blame Najib Razak, who not only headed UMNO, but of course also the coalition together? Was it the weight of the scandal around 1MDB and his own approach to leadership that was the reason for this huge reversal for the party?
I think there are many reasons for Party Gerakan fall down. One of them is we lost touch with the grassroots. We didn't listen to the people. And then definitely for Party Gerakan, we won't blame anybody. We just blame ourselves. Because it's our own party. All the decisions, whether we work under Barisan Nasionals, we are under the flag of BN in the GE14, is all we have to decide ourselves. Since that we decided to go under Barisan Nasional, no need to blame anybody. Just blame ourselves that we are lost touch with the grassroots, lost touch with the people.
Remember, you can catch that show on Let's Talk. Moving next, on my show, I speak with the Political Secretary to Lim Kit Siang and lawyer Shahrizan Johan on my show. Notepad with me, Ibrahim Sani. And in my conversation with Shahrizan Johan, I asked about the recent by-election losses suffered by Pakatan Harapan and whether or not they need to change the narrative. Here's my conversation with Shahrizan.
Question. Right. Are you worried about the two losses suffered by Pakatan Harapan, the two by-elections?
I think in terms of the signals coming from these two by-elections, I think in terms of Cameron, it is actually expected because of the simple fact that the numbers, if you look at the numbers, if there was a straight two-corner fight, I mean, it wasn't a two-corner fight, but if it was really, we're talking about just two main contenders, the PH candidate and also the Barisan Nasional candidate. If you look at the numbers, if you compare the numbers in 2018 during general elections in Cameron Highlands, compare that, the three-corner fight there, with PAS in the picture, you draw out the numbers, you would actually see that the Pakatan Harapan candidate had to make up for a lot of votes deficit. So you actually have to work in order to get those votes. And if we look at the results, there's actually an increase in the vote share, the percentage of the vote share for the Pakatan Harapan candidate in Cameron Highlands. It was a very minimal increase, about 1.2 increase, but there was an increase. So in terms of Cameron Highlands, it meant that we could not gain significant new supporters.
But before you add on, I just want to highlight the graphics. Can we just pull up the particular graphics? We've got 2 pages here, one on Semenyih, yes, but let's focus on the other page, the one on Cameron Highlands. Can we just switch to the other page, please?
Yeah.
Right, so, you know, that sizable lead, right, 4,000 majority, that is not just a highlight towards Pakatan deficiency. It's actually people wanting BN candidate.
Yeah, but if we look at the votes for Barisan Nasional and PAS in the 2018 general elections, the percentage of votes was actually around that. So it was not, looking at it from just the point of view of Cameron Highlands, it meant that, as I said, we did not gain new supporters, even though we now form the federal government. We did gain a significant increase, or rather a small increase of about 1.2%, but that could be attributed with a direct transfer of votes from the PSM candidate at that particular point in time, now voting for the Pakatan Harapan candidate in the by-election.
Also on Notepad, we take a look in the lighter things in life. As you know, or if you might not know, I've been covering the 1MDB news quite substantively over the past few months. But because of the recent trials and tribulations that have been suffered by Malaysians on this saga, a few comedians have actually taken a funny take on 1MDB through their live stand-up comedy show 1MCB. So here is some of the clips of my interview with the 3 comedians running the 1MCB live gag.
You know why there are so few Singaporeans? Singaporeans are so law-abiding that they will not come to a comedy show that is unaudited.
That was a clip that we saw. The clip that you just saw was from the 1MCB show. And joining me, the gentleman, and of course, some people are not able to make it. Sulaiman Azmil, Karen, Bala, Devan, and Gajan Nad. I keep on, messing
That's
up.
fine.
I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
Everyone, there's a running joke where, like, if there's anybody new who's putting my name on a poster or something, they will always get it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
They will always do
and
this.
this is probably the 3rd or 4th time me introducing you. I'm still messing it up. But that's the
okay,
point,
it's
right?
okay.
I mean, we want to make sure that everybody is inclusive. We want to make sure that everybody is going there. Just have some fun. At the end of the day, do you feel that you have a social obligation to entertain at the end of the day? Because here I am, having this, formal show, we're trying to impart information, but that's my job. Is it your job? Do you take it upon yourself? Do you take yourselves too seriously in the sense that, if you guys are not out there to entertain, then Malaysians would be a little bit worse off than before?
Oh, I think this movie.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Well, that's a saying. Comedy is no joke, and if you talk to comics off stage, and that's the only time you get to talk to them anyway, and you get into our passion, into the craft and all that, we can get into pretty serious discussions because. Take the point you said about a social obligation to entertain.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much a social obligation to entertain, but to us, the stage is sacred. Once you get on that stage, you do have that responsibility to give it your best and to that night, or if it's a recorded show and all that, to make the audience either at home or live laugh their root off.
Yeah. So that was my conversation with the folks or the comedians from 1MCB. You can catch that show on Notepad. Moving along, my colleague Dishan Kumar, who runs the show Health Matters, have something very significant to offer for you this week. Take a look.
What I deal with primarily is type 2 diabetes and obesity. But most specifically, I center my care of trying to get diabetic patients off their medications. So what I mean by that is try to reverse type 2 diabetes. And I try to get them off their medication and as well as much as possible lower down for the cases that I can't able to reverse them.
Okay, we have to talk about the why. Why did you actually start this clinic? Maybe you can tell us about that.
Alright, so what I did was I quit the government. That was about a year ago. And to know about the why, we have to go 3 years back. Because I was stationed in Sabah for about 2.5 years, 3 years almost. And when I was there, I was in charge of the NCD clinic, the non-communicable diseases, where mostly I dealt with metabolic diseases, diabetes type 2 and hypertensive patients. So at that point, I was looking after nearly 3,000 patients, around 60 patients a day. And what I noticed was most of the patients in that area, despite the multidiscipline approach that we had a specialist on board, we had a food clinic, a dietitian, a nutritionist, and we were full on. We even had a fundoscopy machine where we checked their eyes annually. So with that standard of care, we were still seeing the numbers of diabetics were going up, the numbers of patients requiring more medications were going up, and not only that, the patients progressing from maxing out their oral doses and going to insulin, being put on insulin, was also increasing massively. It didn't even put a burden on the patient itself, but it was also burdening the government, where we were spending more on medications. What I realized, there was a gap. There was an absolute gap in treatment. Okay, what happens to the patient when he goes home? He sees you for 5 minutes. A patient sees you for 5 minutes, and that's all the time he has. The doctor checks his blood levels, his lab reports, and adjusts his medication, and he says, okay, please lead a healthy lifestyle, exercise, eat right, thank you, come again, I'll see you in another 3 months.
And finally, for this week, on Observing ASEAN, we speak with Sean Goh, the head of Grab Malaysia, about his business plans to expand in this ASEAN region.
I think when we look at regulations overall as a topic, most of the time the spirit of the regulations are very strong. And in this case, in our case in Malaysia, the spirit of the regulations is about quality and safety. And I think that's important to build towards. But when we talk about readiness, one challenge is that regulations tend to be a bit stagnant over time. So take for example e-hailing regulations. The starting base for e-hailing regulations is the taxi regulations. And taxi regulations really were created in a different time where you had less access to technology, you had less means to actually innovate for quality and safety. So our biggest suggestion really was building upon that base of the regulations. How do we leverage technology to innovate? Not only to meet the regulations, but to actually set a new bar for ASEAN as well as the whole world. I think to some extent there is some customization for the country. So for Indonesia, for example, bikes are a very big part of the e-hailing industry. In Malaysia, we're really a lot more focused on cars. Malaysians are very used to cars as the primary mode of transport. The customization that I think is more important than the country-specific customizations is really customizing to cater to the digital industry. So one example is, in the past we used to have full training for a few hours, classroom training basically. Drivers come in, they sit through training, and really we're not sure whether that results in good quality or good behavior or great service. Or something that we've been testing that is only possible in e-hailing today, not in the taxi industry in the past, is digital training. Digital training through the smartphone allows us, first of all, to be a lot more contextually relevant. So we can actually feed training material that is relevant to that specific driver, that specific driver's feedback and patterns. It can be timely, so we can actually give feedback on how to actually greet a customer when the driver first gets a pickup, for example. So the timeliness and the relevance of the content is very critical.
Those are the kind of shows that we have on offer for this week's AWANI's Selecta. Remember to catch all these shows only on Astro AWANI. You can watch us on the mobile app as well. Just Google or download all the apps from your favorite app store. That's it from me for this week. Until next time.